welcome members to the National Park Authority meeting on the 27th of February 2026. It's 10 o'clock and we're underway, and we welcome anyone who is listening in. We start with the first agenda item, apologies for absence. I've had apologies from Andy Nash, Mike Chaplin and Charlotte Kelly. I think that's everyone, unless anyone brings apologies from anyone else. Well done, Ken. Just in the nick of time. It's okay. You're only 20 seconds out, Ken. Thank you. We move on to agenda item 2, then minutes of the previous meeting. Are there any? The only correction I would make is for in the chair's briefing, which is 107.25. There's a steel rail plan, really should be steel cotton rail trail. I apologise for my obvious lack of diction at last meeting. But are there any other elements anyone has any comment on? If not, can I have someone move the acceptance of those minutes? Ginny, thank you, and Lee, second them. All those in favour of accepting? Any against? Any abstentions? One abstention? Thank you. Thank you, members. We move on then to, I've not been notified of any urgent business, nor of any public participation. So we move on to agenda item 5, members' declarations of interest. Are there any declarations that anyone wishes to make? Hannah Corrin?
I just wanted to say that I'm currently volunteering for PPCV, so just declaring an interest there. Okay,
thank you. Are there any others? If not, thank you very much. And we move on to agenda item 6, the chair's briefing. I shall try and be succinct and speedy, but so on top of the usual attendance at planning committees since our November meeting, so planning committee, that's been 3 times, resources committee once, local plan steering group 5 times and counting. We've got 3 or 4 more meetings of the group before the end of March. Governance working group once, chairs and vice chairs meeting once, and then there's, on top of that there's the weekly briefing meetings with the chief exec and with the deputy chair of the authority. So in December there was an amount of National Parks England activity, extraordinary board meeting on the 3rd to do with the recruitment panel, recruitment of the new executive director, and then a National Parks UK board meeting all day on the 3rd, which was the culmination of my period of being chair of National Parks UK. Just the 2 events, one the conference that we held in the summer here, and this was the culminating event, just picking up on a range of issues, but it also enabled us to hand over to the chair of Pembroke National Park, who is the lucky incumbent for 2026. I do beg your pardon, Brecon Beacons. I apologise to him and to both national parks in Wales. On the 9th of December, Phil, Chief Exec, and then myself met with Andrew McCloy, who is drafting the document, the publication for the 75th anniversary celebrations. And that was to both establish some content, but also it was his opportunity to quiz both myself and Phil on our perspectives of the Peak District National Park to inform what he will be drafting for that document. Which will be released, we hope, in time for the summer celebration. Then our 11th of December, another National Parks England board meeting, looking at matters various. I say that because I can't, in all honesty, remember exactly the detail. So I'll move hastily on to the 15th of December, when we had we both participated, Phil and myself, in a progress meeting with Mayor Clare for East Midlands Combined Counties Authority, over the where we are with the Buxton Very Light Rail initiative, and that's because the meeting earlier in 25 had set some targets for things to be done. Some of them have been met, some of them hadn't, but the overall project is moving forward, which is good news, and it is being supported by Mayor Clare and MCA at the moment, so that it is good news as well. And I think we need to bear in mind that there are some interesting, I think, positive implications of that initiative if it comes to fruition, which is providing a link between Buxton and the railhead in Buxton and the head of our Monsell Trail at Blackwelldale, which is going to, if you like, fill in part of the White Peak Loop initiative. Then in January, on the 6th, I was part of the interview panel for the Executive Director of National Parks England in London, and that was a successful meeting, and Debbie Stockwell starts, I think, she started, right, I thought it was the beginning of March, it was Monday, but I've just been informed that she's already in seat. Certainly, Phil and I have a meeting with her, a kind of familiarisation meeting in about a week's time, don't we? Yeah. And in the same vein, on the 9th of January, we met with Sue Albion, who is the new chair of the National Parks Partnership. Again, it was a familiarisation, but also from her perspective to get a steer from about the ways in which we, as the Peak District National Park Authority, might see an NPP, National Parks Partnership, moving forward. So it was quite useful. In January as well, there is a half-hour meeting with the directors of National Parks England, with the chair, Vanessa Rowland, who's the chair of South Downs National Park, just to catch up, a bit of information handling from Vanessa's perspective, just to keep her directors informed as to what she's been up to in terms of her meetings with ministers, with department heads and things like that, as part of the development and progress of National Parks England. Oh yes, and then on the 15th of January, Phil, Janet, as Deputy Chair and myself, we were interviewed as part of the DEFRA consultancy initiative on the governance of protected landscapes, which again was really quite interesting in terms of what we were able to share on the back of documents that have been before this authority previously, and respond to the questions that the consultant was asking on behalf of DEFRA. So we await the product from that overall initiative in due course. And then 19th of January and subsequently I participated on the National Parks England Governance Working Group, which is chaired by Phil. It's a bit incestuous, but it seems to work, which is reassuring. And then on the 28th of January, with the chair and with some of our officers, we met with the new chief exec and some of the directors of MCA in Chesterfield. And again, it was an opportunity to remind MCA officers of the role of the national park and their relationship, to try to establish the relationship with MCA, because as a new body, they have a responsibility under Section 245 of the Levelling Up and Regeneration Act to have regard to our national park purposes. And it's something I think that is quite important at the early stages of the development of MCA and its policies and its approaches. It was an important opportunity both to meet them in person, but also, thanks to Simon and Sarah, to provide them with some briefing documents beforehand, which one hopes will sit in their files somewhere, hopefully not in the waste paper bin bit, but to remind them of what we're about as a national park, what our responsibilities are, how we function, what our governance is, in order that as they move further into their briefs, such as transport, then the role of the National Park Authority doesn't get missed, and the rural areas, the important rural areas, as far as we're concerned in this part of the world, aren't overlooked. I think, members, that's about as much as I can share with you, or want to share with you, the minutiae of my life is not relevant for this meeting. So thank you very much. You can ask me a question or two if you wish, but I don't advise it. In the nicest possible way, you understand. Okay, if there are no further comments or questions, we'll move on to item 7, the Chief Exec's report. Phil, do you have any updates? I believe you have one.
Yeah, just one update since the report was written. It's good to see you all this morning, members. And while we're just here, I just wanted to welcome Nabil and Hayley, who are sat in at the back of the room, who have just started as our Landscape Connections new team. So they're sitting in on an authority meeting. It's great to have them here, and Landscape Connections really kicking off. That's our big lottery programme on nature enhancements along the trails in the White Peak, and it's a big partnership piece, so that's brilliant. Now the update I was going to say is that we have now interviewed for the new head of service, or for the head of service for assets and enterprise, and we've made an offer to a candidate this week. So that is very exciting, very good news that we've been able to make an offer. Obviously when we've got contracts signed, I'll let everyone know who that is, but that's really positive.
Okay, thank you. And you did commit in your report to share the slide deck for the DEFRA meeting.
Yeah, we had the annual meeting with our DEFRA colleagues. We've got a slide deck for that, so I will get that sent around to members. I don't think there's anything in there that you haven't seen coming through these meetings, but just to see a summary in one place might be quite useful to flick through.
Okay, thanks, Phil. Any comments or questions on Phil? Ginny?
Just want to thank you both for really good reports, informing us what you've been doing, and thank you for all your hard work.
Thank you. Thank you. I hope that's minuted. Okay, any other comments or questions? If not, Ruth Stratton.
Just a question. I just wondered, as a resident of the Staffordshire Moorlands, whether the member has been appointed yet to replace Andrew Hart.
Not to my knowledge, but no,
Okay,
no,
thank you.
I'm afraid not.
Okay, thank you.
So there's a voice from the corps, in case you didn't hear it, they are being chased, as in CHASED, right? Okay, Yvonne, sorry. Sorry, Charles.
Right, okay.
Yvonne Witter.
I just wanted to, in Phil's report, it mentioned about the additional funding for access and active travel, and it says connectivity to Sheffield and Bakewell, and I wonder if there could be anything done about the bus routes from Sheffield to Bakewell, including the 218. And Saturday I had an experience with 4 grandchildren in the muddy trainers waiting for the bus. 2:15 didn't turn up, 2:45 didn't turn up. And then the 2575 to 4, we got that 1.5 hours to Sheffield. And when we said he hasn't turned up, he said, again. So that 218, we just need to see what's happening with that bus route. It's just getting worse and worse. Thanks.
I think noted is as much as I can do at the minute.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously that's not our responsibility, but we work closely now with the new mayor, who has powers now and budgets for transport and buses. So we are in close contact with Mayor Ward, and we have input into the new travel plan that's being proposed. And of course, public transport, getting people to the National Park on public transport is an absolute priority of ours. We emphasise that all the time, and we're always encouraging the mayor and others to look at that provision. So I'm sorry about your experience, and it is, you know, you do lead the way in using public transport around the park, and it's an inspiration to all of us that you battle on and do that all the time. So thank you for that, and yeah, we'll keep trying to get better public transport into the national park.
And I will be writing to the mayor as well. Thank you.
Yeah, because I was going to say, while Phil's comments are entirely appropriate, it will be Sheffield, and unfortunately Mike Chaplin isn't here as Sheffield City Council representative, but it will be Oliver Coppard and the South Yorkshire mayoralty having taken over the buses that we need to talk to, isn't it? Yeah. But it would be worth, I think, talking to Mike as well to see if some pressure can be applied from Sheffield City Council, because obviously you are a constituent of Sheffield, so we take it that way as well. Ken Rustridge.
Yeah, if I could come in on the self-same point, obviously in the north of the Peak District, obviously the part thereof that goes into Greater Manchester, and that Andy Burnham, I know, is very passionate and has achieved that bring all the buses and the public transport and pushing that into public control. But the key thing is to try to get people into the national park, and I just wondered if we could maybe link with that part and indeed all the other areas to try to, because it also links in with the issue of the parking and people trying to get through, and there's different ways of doing that. And I am aware that you can get, going down to Bakewell, there is a bus that goes right through from Bakewell to the centre of Manchester. There was a previous one, I don't know what it was called, and it stopped that one. So it's maybe just thinking, I know it's outside the remit of the park as such, but obviously can talk to the respective mayors, and please everybody link up together so we can help all our people to gain access to
Sure, I think that's a
Thank you.
cogent comment, but I think also it falls within the remit. We have been pushing Mayor Clare and East Midlands about public transport in the Peak District, and she has launched what she calls, I think, a Peak Peak Partnership, which is principally liaising with Manchester and Sheffield mayoralties. I know those aren't the correct terms precisely, in order to look at integration and coordination and provision. So while we don't have a direct remit, we're certainly trying to lever a little bit of positive response. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments on Chief Exec's report? Janet Dugdale.
Yeah, thank you. Phil, in 3.1 you talk about local government reform. I'm just wondering if we've got any indications of timescales for decisions made on the consultation and how it will be actioned, because obviously this impacts us as a membership and how we're composed.
So off the top of my head, I can't remember, but there is a timetable set out. So other people involved might know the timetable. I think it's, so submissions have gone in to government by the various authorities. And I think it might, well, it's, can anyone help me on the month they're going to let us know? It's around,
We were told in council last night that it was likely to be June, the unofficial announcement sort of thing.
Okay. So from that point on, we should know what the chosen option is, the government having done the consultation listen. Then the timetable, as I understand it, would be next April, springtime, maybe May, April, May, that kind of time. There would be elections to shadow authorities that would then come into being a year after that. So the key point, I think, is around June, early summer.
Okay, if there are no further comments or questions, we can move on to the items for decision. Agenda item 8, the Authority Plan 2328. I believe Emmett is here already. No additions no additions to the report. So members, as ever, we assume that folk have read the report. And are there any comments or questions of Emmett? Patrick Brady.
Thank you, Chair. Two questions and one comment. The first one is on the first page of the table. Maintain PDNP managed footpaths. I wasn't aware that we managed footpaths, unless perhaps the ones that go across our land. What are those?
So, yeah, that's just directly in reference to any footpaths on land that we are managing, which is very limited. It's a target in our authority plan, I believe, because, we do have some limited areas where we do manage those.
Okay, thank you. The bottom of the second page, develop external funding bids programme, which is absolutely right. Full cost recovery. If we're doing projects which we bid for funding for, don't we usually end up paying part of the cost ourselves anyway? Isn't that usually the circumstances of a grant?
So, Patrick, that might be referring to matched funding contributions. So we often get given a proportion of the total cost from a donor, and then we're required to put some match funding in, which can be in cash or can be in kind. That's slightly different from this point here, which is when we submit for a project, we try and not only cover the salary cost for the staff that are going to be employed, but their overheads as well. With some donors, that's very standard and is fine. With other donors, it isn't always the case. And in particular with the National Lottery Heritage Fund, as a local authority, we are not allowed to claim any overheads for the staff that are employed. Now, those are the things like providing a desk, an IT service, an HR function, and so on. So they are real costs, but we can generally, if we get a donor who can support a project but not overheads, we'll make a decision each time on that, but generally that wouldn't stop us normally. We would kind of cover those overheads in other ways. But it's just the point is we should always be seeking to try and cover those overheads where we can.
I get that, but it was the way it was worded. It looks as though it's for every single project, but that's not what we're talking about. Okay? And the last one is on the page 4 of 5, and it's the review of standing orders. As a comment, I do hope that we get more done than just the rules of procedure. We've been very slow in getting this off the ground, and I hope we can put a bit more oomph into what we're doing to try and get this sewn up as quickly as we can, because it needs doing. And the sooner we get to grips with it, the better.
I think it's a fair comment that things have been slower than we anticipated. But before Angela makes any comment, I think it's worth reminding members that we have a limited legal provision, and with the initiatives that we've been able to follow up this last year and slightly more in terms of income generating projects on the back of the 1.6 million capital addition that we were given by government for the current financial year, that has taken up a lot of the resource, both within legal, within assets, within a lot of the officer time. Added to which, Angela, unfortunately, in looking to get out of doing this work, broke her ankle and was incapacitated as a result, which is very neat, but it has slowed down the project, and I'm sure that once the dust settles on the income-generating projects, and she is now walking again, which not always linked to brain power, she was working from home for some of the time, that we'll be back trying to get on track with this work. Would you like to add any comment to that?
Only that I hope so too. It remains a priority.
Okay. Okay. Any other comments or questions on Emmett's report? Matt and then Rachel. Matt Buckler.
I know that we had issues in terms of the nature recovery plan, or the one plan for nature in the Peak District, and there's no mention of it in the report or the appendix. And at the moment, we've got no targets associated with it. It would be good to see what there is around that, because of how important, as we discussed yesterday, how important the Peak District is for nature recovery in the East Midlands. It's such a big chunk of the sites of special scientific interest for large numbers of communities. It'd be good to know what's going to happen to implement that this year.
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, the nature recovery plan, we go back to this kind of split that we've made between the authority plan and the National Park Management Plan in terms of our work programmes, if that makes sense. So the nature recovery plan stuff sits within the management plan because it's partnership activity. So we don't report on that directly through the authority plan. It comes out through the management plan work that we do. And it remains a priority. We're working we're starting to plan the next management plan. We're kicking off the next management plan process in the new financial year, and that will sit firmly within that process. So we've got plans in foot for all of that.
Yeah, I think Simon's right about where you see these things reported, but your point is very valid. We have Rodri Thomas, who will be leaving us through retirement. He is going to stay on for some extra time to focus solely now on making the actions clear in the Peak District Management Nature Recovery Plan. So there's some extra resource, if you like, going in to finish off, because we've got the kind of the strategy, but it's the actions and the detailed planning, and Rodri's going to work on all of that for us before he then retires.
Yeah, can I can see, in some ways it would be good to have that reflected in this, because in some the corporate plan is what we're doing as an organisation rather than what's happening in the national park, but we're leading quite a lot of the stuff within the management plan, so it would be good to see what our actions are to deliver the management plan, because whilst it's not our, whilst they're partnership agreements, we must play a key role in the delivery of the management plan, and so it would be good to have explained what it is we're going to do to deliver the management plan in each corporate year.
Perhaps that's something to take away and...
Absolutely, we take that on board, Matt. We take that on board in the sort of forward planning for the authority planning as well, which we need to have a look at alongside the management plan as we go along as well. So I'd absolutely take that on board.
Okay, so thank you, Matt. Rachel Bennett.
Matt's covered what I was going to ask. It was about how we integrate the management plan with the authority plan.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other comments or questions? Janet Dugdale.
Yeah, thank you. I think all of these critical success factors are, of course, critical. A big one here looks like the local plan, getting that through this year. Can I ask what PINS is? Is that a planning inspectorate?
The planning inspectorate.
Thank you very much. And I noticed there seems to be a hard deadline of the July authority to get the draft accepted. What happens if it doesn't get accepted?
It's not exactly the end of civilization as we know it.
But pretty close. It's the edge of the abyss, is it? Okay.
The reason why July is critical is that that's the opportunity for we have members forum in the next two, March and May authorities, which will give members the opportunity to comment on the draft local plan. Then the plan will come to July authority hopefully for approval, because the time is then needed to take on board final comments to prepare that document for submission by the deadline of December. If we miss that deadline, it means we have to go almost back to square one and jig the plan to the current set of regulations of how these things are done. At the moment, we're working to the previous set of criteria, which means that we have until December to submit. If we miss that deadline, we've got to go virtually back to square one and start all over again, which is obviously what we don't want to do, because we've invested an awful lot of time, money and other resources in getting to where we are now, which is why those of us on the working group are meeting almost every week, certainly every fortnight, to go through the policies that are being drafted both for discussion by members in March and May, and for final consideration in July. But it is critical that we meet that July deadline. Is Adele, is there anything that you wish to add to that?
There's a period of consultation as well, so after it's approved by authority in July, there's another statutory consultation period that we have to put in, and then there's some pre-submission work that you have to do, and that builds in a time lag as well. So you have to submit to PINS all the documents that you've got, and then check it, and only then when they've done that check can you submit. So there's an inherent time lag in the process. And if you do miss July for whatever reason, then I think we could maybe have to schedule an extraordinary meeting to get that approval. But we do need to have quite a big chunk of time in order to do the process with these building timelines.
Which is why I think it remains critical that we try to meet the July deadline.
Yeah, so the fact that this says it's a critical success factor, we really do mean it's a critical success
absolutely.
factor. Thank you.
Yeah.
I just wanted to flag that.
Okay. That was a long-winded way of my saying yes. Okay, are there any other comments or questions? Mandy Martin.
Thank you. There's quite a lot in the plan. Is there anywhere where we're particularly exposed to slippage, whether it be through not having the skills in place or having vacant posts or relying too heavily on partners? And if so, is there anywhere in the plan where you've considered that we might need to deprioritise moving forward?
I guess a key thing to look at would be, as most of the actions are staying the same, reporting on these actions from previous years, I think has shown that most of the objectives are on track and delivered most years. A lot of them roll over and stay broadly similar. I think it's the assets objectives that tend to be some that fall behind, and I think part of that is due to a vacancy, where there is a recruitment process ongoing for the rural surveyor post, I believe. Otherwise, we will be beginning the process of the risk review for turn of year shortly, which will involve kind of recapping the reporting on the authority plan and pulling out any potential delivery risks.
Okay, thank you. Phil, did you want to?
Yeah, I think the nature of this organisation is that we really are dependent on our staff to deliver most of what we do, really, staff and volunteers and members. But so key to this is having the staff in place and having stability. We have just made this key appointment now, and there's actually quite a short notice period for that person, which is positive. If anyone resigns or leaves or whatever during the year, and it's a key role, that could really knock this off course. We never know whether that's going to happen, and people leave for all sorts of reasons. When we get into Part B, we'll talk about, the finances, the settlement and so on. And I think just, what I can say here is that I'm now expecting a period of stability, which is really positive given what we have had. And so we're not planning kind of any further reductions that would impact our delivery, but you never know what might happen to any individual.
Thanks, Phil. Any other comments or questions? Ken Rustage.
Just a quick point at point E, net zero. It said the report doesn't directly contribute to meeting net zero. However, actions under Objective S, climate change, aim to reduce the authority's greenhouse gas, so provides members with further information what's delivered. I mean, how is that progressing? But also the question is, the terms of the greenhouse gas from the Peak District, is that a lot that linked with the peat and talk about the problems going? I think I've mentioned it in earlier meetings. The loss of the I can't think what they call it now. There was something for the University of Sheffield and the University of Liverpool were doing something to experiment to try to get. I was on to one of the MPs about that to plant things and.
That's part of the Most of the Future project, I would imagine.
That was one, yeah.
Emma.
I guess in terms of how this report contributes, the climate change objective refers more explicitly to the authority's kind of asset emissions.
Yes,
so that's to do
yes.
with mostly our buildings and things like that. So we have our carbon management plan in place, which has a track to reduce our kind of in-house emissions. Whilst we're also signed up to this Race to Zero as a National Park Authority, as part of, or as a national park, I should say, as part of national parks across the UK. Which we're sort of working on tracking our emissions, which also include those land-based emissions. Reporting for that is sort of underway, I suppose. We've recently submitted, or last year submitted to the CDP, which is how we sort of track that Race to Zero, and received a kind of score of how we're doing in terms of delivery on that, which I haven't received the full report for yet, but I think we'll probably include in our climate change action reporting when we get around to that.
I could just come back very briefly, Chair. And in terms of the assets, so what kind of assets have we got that? I'm trying to think, what is it, like vehicles, diesel, I don't know.
So it's vehicles and buildings mostly in terms of so it's I think our tenanted buildings as well as our kind of in-hand buildings and our vehicle fleet.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you.
I think if I could just add to that, in a kind of indirect way, we own farmland, we have farming tenancies, and animals do contribute, but we are, in some areas of our land ownership, we are able to adjust tenancies to combat that. In others, because of the nature of the tenancies at the moment, we aren't able to. So there's there are things are being worked on, but there's some things are more possible than others, I would suggest. Nigel Atkins.
Nick, can I ask what your proposals are then to reduce the effect of methane from ruminants?
I would have to
what you just alluded to.
Yeah. Well, the farm that we've just refurbished at Wardlow, on the eastern Worslow estate, we are looking at particular ways of farming at levels of stock levels in order to minimise the emissions. That kind of thing is what I understand to be the case. So it is in part experimental in order to try to demonstrate to the farming community generally that some of these things might be possible or are possible by adjusting the nature of the farming business. Yeah? Okay. Phil, do you want to?
I think if Sue Fletcher was here, who has headed up this work, she would talk about also the role of grazing in conservation as well, and that is an important part of what we do. So I don't think we have an intention to remove all grazing from farmland that the authority owns, because there's an important conservation role there. It's about getting those levels right, and when we assess new tenants, they go through a strict comprehensive process looking at all the things they're going to offer and contribute, and assessing their environmental impact is an important part of that. I haven't been hands-on involved with those assessments, but they're very comprehensive. We visited farms where the authority own, I think before you started, Nick, around where we were putting in new buildings that would be for continued animal use, because actually what we wanted from conservation from those animals was really important. We also have a role to play in, with a lot of our farm holdings, they're relatively small, so they're often kind of start-up or people trying farming, getting into it, and that is a role that we do play as well. And obviously we've got a role to play in food production as well. So all of these things are balanced out, and there's not just kind of one strict policy on it.
I think that's important. Ruminants aren't seen as a bad thing, they're a tool, and we need to be using them in an effective way.
Indeed. Thank you. Any other comments, questions, members? If not, the recommendations are before you. Can I have someone to move those recommendations? Janet Dugdale, Ken Rustage seconded. All those in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? Thank you, members. That's moved. Thank you, Simon. Emma? Can move on to agenda item 9 in that case, and Adele Metcalfe is going to be available to short presentation, I understand. Yep.
Thank you, Chairman. I do have just a short presentation to illustrate some of the projects and activities that are occurring under the National Park Management Plan aim for thriving and sustainable communities. These are two recent approvals of 100% affordable needs homes in Yulegrave and Bakewell. You can see they're quite significant numbers there, and a really nice design, including biodiversity net gain and some public open space. Just to illustrate that we know it can be a long and complicated process to get these schemes delivered, but we have a very successful working relationship with our housing authorities. We work really proactively to bring these schemes to application and development, and it's really nice when it happens, and we've had these two happening very recently, so that's really good to see. We touched on the local plan. I don't want to go into this too much because we have got a session this afternoon about the local plan. I can go into that in a lot more detail, including on the timescales. But it's one of the key aspects of the work that we're doing under this theme for this year and the next year. It's on track where it should be. There's some important new policy areas that are coming forward through the local plan. Bulleted here, won't go into them, but obviously we can touch on that in anything in detail this afternoon. One of the things we're looking at, which is a new approach, is we're looking much more closely at settlement character and landscape sensitivity. So we've done a big piece of work with the officer team and working with consultants, and we're building in those findings into the local plan itself, and that does two things for us. It gives us an overall picture of what capacity there might be for development on the edge of settlements, and it's also a tool for helping to make those kind of detailed development management decisions. So that's a big piece of work, and we've only just got this together from the consultants. We were hoping to have it last year, but I will be sharing this with you in a lot more detail, not this afternoon, but at the next session that we have, which is scheduled for March, I think. I'll go into that in a lot more detail. We do a lot of work with Business Peak District. We host the events here and we facilitate their actions that they do. This is just an infographic that they provided for us because the membership has really picked up this year, and the kind of networking connection things that they're doing has really picked up this year. So they wanted us to share that with you. And also, this is just to illustrate the grants. We don't administer them, but we are kind of oversee and are involved in that kind of process of where these grants go. And it's just to point out to you that quite a lot of it does come the Peak District's way. So this is just a list of some of the schemes that have come forward, and a pointer there to the grant that we got at Millersdale. And same for the next few slides. It's just to show that the distribution of these grants is proportionate in terms of coming into the national park area. So that's the Staffordshire Moorlands, and that's the Derbyshire Dales area. I think you can just see the boundary of the national park there in yellow, so the kind of pinpoint locations where those grants are going, lots coming to the national park. And similarly with the decarbonisation and startup grants, a proportionate amount is coming to the national park. That's really kind of welcome. You probably know already, and some of you will be very closely involved in, but the first phase of the Peak District Walking, Wheeling, Cycling, Horse Riding Infrastructure Plan, if somebody can invent a great acronym for that, fantastic, let us know. It's a real mouthful, but that's completed, and we're confident that phase 2 will start in the next financial year. So this is the plan, and we're looking at building up some of these actions in the plan closer to a delivery stage. And this is the high-level network plan. This will also be in the local plan, so that where we see opportunities to implement the plan through development, we can link those two together. And that's a piece of work that's really progressed quite significantly over the last year and will continue to do so. I also wanted to point at a few risks. So we've highlighted it at the end of the report. I'll just touch on it again here. We can go into it in more detail this afternoon, but it is very much something that we're not quite getting on top of, but we need to get on top of it because I think there are some risks coming. One of them is around these things called spatial development strategies. And these were brought by the Planning and Infrastructure Bill Act from last year, and introduced another layer of plan making, which will sit above our local plan. The 20-year plans, the high-level spatial plans, they're developed at a sub-regional area, and they will look at those things that are bulleted there. So significantly for us, about meeting housing needs. We're still waiting for secondary legislation on these. The government has advised that will come forward before the summer recess, and as soon as it does, these plan-making authorities should start writing their spatial development strategies. So this is going to be coming out pretty quickly, but in the time of us producing our own local plan. And significantly, national park authorities won't have responsibility for producing these spatial development strategies. So we're going to be in a situation that we haven't been for a long time, in that there's another layer of plan making that sits above our own local plan. These are the government's words. This is from a current consultation that's out at the moment on the geographies of the spatial development strategies. And it's highlighted that there will be challenges for national park authorities if you're covered by more than one spatial development strategy. And this is the map that's out to consultation. So these are the proposed spatial development strategy areas. So we're covered by more than one, we're covered by 6. So that may be a problem for us. So just to go back to the other slides, the government said we do not expect this to be an insurmountable problem. National parks are not expected to be the focus for significant amounts of new development. However, we'll keep this matter under consideration and we'll look for some close engagement. So all these words, significant levels, an insurmountable problem, we've got nothing to attach any really deep meaning to that at the moment. That's something that we really need to be on top of and aware of as the legislation emerges over the course of the year. And the other significant thing is, as well as the spatial development strategies coming on board, we have a national planning policy framework consultation out at the moment, and that sets out some of the detail how the spatial development strategies will work in tandem with the new national planning policies. And there's some significant concerns for us in what's set out. At the moment, the heads of planning of all the national park authorities, that's why Brian Taylor's not sat here and I am, are meeting in part to discuss this, because all the national park authorities are concerned about the wording in the NPPF and the relationship between that, us, and the new spatial development strategies. And I've just highlighted a few things. There's lots and lots. There's a big paper that's been drafted that will be submitted by National Parks England in response to the consultation, highlighting in detail all these concerns. It's a 20-page report. I've just got 4 bullets for you here, just highlighting some of the main ones. And it's all about detail, but that's really important for us, the meaning of these words. So at the moment, we can say great weight and the highest status of protection for landscape and scenic beauty in national parks. It's proposed that that is removed. So lots of things will be given substantial weight. And at the moment, we can interpret great weight as higher than substantial weight in regard to landscape and scenic beauty. And that high status of protection, that's the kind of phrasing that we use to defend the decisions that we make and justify the policies that we write. And that's proposed to go. And then there's what I've touched on already, the role, purpose and content of spatial development strategies. How will that work with our own local plan? At the moment, we can set our own housing level. We can do that using our own methodology, and we are in charge of that. That will change when the spatial development strategies come in. And I think I'm right in saying that we are just a consultee in that process. So we're not an active partner in putting those strategies together. So that's really important that we work out that relationship with the organisations that will be writing those spatial development strategies. A key change in the National Planning Policy Framework, and this is a real detail, but it's so important to the way we frame our approach to development in the national park. At the moment in the National Planning Policy Framework, there's an asterisk which links to a footnote which links to the National Parks Vision and Circular, and there are 2 paragraphs in there that says that our focus should be on local need affordable homes, and we hang our whole strategy on that. And in the new NPPF, that footnote reference is lost. The National Parks Vision and Circular is an old document. The older they get without being replaced, the less weight they are given in decision making, so that's really important for us. And there are lots and lots and lots of changes where there's a one-size-fits-all approach to development management. That really, we don't do that. We do it differently in national parks. We always have, and we've got a strong reason for doing that, and that's not recognised in the new NPPF. That's it. Just a few key risks that I've identified. I'm happy to talk about any of those this afternoon for those staying in for the forum.
Thanks very much, Adele. If that doesn't cause sleepless nights, then I wonder what does. As ever, we live in interesting times, and Adele has outlined some of the most interesting. Thank you, Adele, for that presentation and for the report. Members, any comments or questions, bearing in mind Adele's stricture about stuff that will be discussed both this afternoon, or in the members' forum, and in future members' fora in March and May. Janet Dugdale.
Yeah, thank you, Adele. That didn't really cheer me up, but thank you anyway. I might have missed it, but what are the likely timescales for these changes?
So the spatial development strategies, the secondary legislation will be laid before Parliament. This is what the government said in the latest consultation on the geographies, that they expect it to be laid before Parliament before the summer recess, and that as soon as that is laid, then those spatial development strategy authorities should get on with starting their preparation. So it's pretty quick, and it's in advance of submitting our own local plan.
Thank you. Chris O'Leary.
Chair, thank you. Chair, that in terms of Cheshire and Warrington, it's only just been created, so there's going to be some time delay in terms of it developing its strategy. But I just wonder, from what you've said, this sounds like this ought to be a growth item in the budget to ensure that there are sufficient staff to be able to do these negotiations with the 6 mayoral authorities to make sure that the national park isn't completely destroyed by these strategies.
Yes, part of the consultation response that we're drafting, I think, will be to say it really doesn't make sense for us to have to be in conformity with 6, especially where you've got these tiny edge ones, and it would just be a very small part of that strategy. We've already had a conversation with the Greater Manchester Combined Authority just last week to have this conversation. So I think that those authorities and us will be saying this doesn't make sense, and can you change it so that we just have to conform with, say, 1 or 2 or whatever. So we'll be saying that, and they may change it. So if they're in listening mode, it may get changed. But I made a joke at the end of that conversation to say, yeah, there's going to be a lot of admin. But you're right, to being in conformity with 6 spatial development strategies, just even if they don't say anything significant, just the process of demonstrating that conformity is very time consuming. Yeah.
I think on that issue, it is possible to point to previous precedent, because when there were 4 regional bodies, a government, I think for many things, was content with East Midlands being the lead regional authority, and the other 3 kind of tagged along. So we just had to deal with 1 regional body in the main, and whatever came out of that negotiation was applied then to the other 3. Now, whether that aspect will prevail again is a moot point, of course. But thanks for the comment, Chris. Any other comments or questions? If not, thank you, members. There is a recommendation. Do I have anyone moving that? Charles Greaves seconding that. Ken Rustich, thank you. All those in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? Thank you, members. Thank you, Adele. We move on to that section of the agenda, in that case, members for information, and item 10 is the report back from the Chair of Planning Committee. Patrick Brady.
Thank you, Chairman. We've had 2 meetings, or was it 3 actually? We're in March. We had 3 meetings, I think, since the last meeting of this authority. The usual mix of applications, 2 or 3 fairly controversial ones at I'm just trying to work out what my writing says. The affordable housing in Peak Forest, the Millersdale railway station car parking. We made amendments to the application for the car park at Stanage Edge. 1 or 2 smaller applications which have caused a lot of local problems but are not of great significance. A great concern about flood relief measures being taken at Balladon Quarry and what the impact of those would be downstream. and perhaps one rather odd application for a pub in the middle of an industrial estate in Tideswell, where the issue was, well, this is not an industrial use and therefore it shouldn't be there. But the committee really took the view that it was supporting another industrial use elsewhere, and so that's gone back to be looked at again. But on the whole, it's the usual mix of applications.
Thank you, Patrick. Don't know whether there's any comment or question. Ken Rustage?
I mean, just going back to that less interesting one, as I drove down today, they got in the Thornbridge, where it's in an industrial estate, and the beer is very tasty, but I don't know, I'm wondering if that was the same thing. Thank you.
It's not the same one, but I don't think we're into advertising some of the commercial benefits of... anyway, moving hastily on, I think, but thank you, Ken. Thank you, Patrick. Item 11 then, the report from Chair of Resources Committee, Charles Greaves.
Thanks, Chair. So we had our Resources Committee meeting on the 23rd of January. So there were two Part A items. So one was the Landscape Observatory funding. So we're going to have a bit more on that later on today. But that was to give permission for officers to enter into an agreement with the Protected Landscapes Partnership and National Parks England to continue hosting the observatory. The other bit of Part A was the new parking bylaws policy, and also then the specific areas of the North Lees estate where they would apply. For Part B, we then had the Fieldhead lease renewal, the Millersdale lease renewal, and a bit on active travel funding. Okay. Just one comment to make. I had gone back on Civica just to refresh myself on what the Part A and Part B items were, because we had a bit of a shuffle around. And the meeting's not showing on Civica anymore, but I did manage to get the detail off of our website. So I don't know why the agenda's been dropped off. Normally it is kept on. But I wonder if it had been misfiled. You know,
Sure.
So
thanks for that. We'll certainly take that up. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Charles. Any comments or questions? If not, thank you for those. We move on to reports from outside bodies, which I do welcome. It's been a long time since we've had a plethora of reports from outside bodies, so I would continue to encourage those members who are our representatives, whenever it's appropriate, to make those reports. There's one from Martin Beer on the Local Access Forum, and Martin is exhorting members to catch up with some of the information via the links that are in the report. There's nothing else you wish to...
I just found
microphone.
I just found it interesting what the mayor representative said, and I think fits with what you're hearing.
Yep, well, that's encouraging. Thank you, Martin. And then is it on this?
Yes,
issue?
it is.
Janet, go down.
Yeah, Martin, thank you for your report. Can I just ask a question on issues for which the views of members are sought? It says there's an opportunity for members to put forward ideas for improving transport in the national park. And I noticed at the beginning of the meeting, Yvonne and others were asking questions about that. What is that mechanism to put forward ideas, and who is it to? It's useful to know we can do that, but what's the process they do that by?
I've been talking to Tim Nicholson, and I think in the first instance it should be looking over at Phil. It should be talked to Tim Nicholson, since he's the transport planner, and that would be, I would assume, the mechanism for bringing ideas forward to the authority.
Yep, that's absolutely fine. I mean, I think I read that as also members in their own right can contribute to things like the MCA Transport Strategy Consultation. So members are able to go through that route as residents or individuals as an authority, yeah, Tim is the person who kind of coordinates our views and responses, and Tim will bring items to members where that's sort. In fact, Tim's around later for the forum as well, items, so you'll be able to meet him if you've not met him and talk to him about anything there.
Okay.
Thank you. It's just, I know there've been, and Bill's the same, there's quite a few members who've got views on transport, which I think if they're want to comment as individuals, it's useful to know they can go through this EMCA route to make comments.
Yeah, thank you for that, drawing that point out, Janet, thank you. Then there's the second report, which is from Ruth Swetnam and Janet Dugdale on the foundation report. Again, do either of you wish to make anything additional?
No, only that the foundation's going from strength to strength, and they really are beginning to bring in some big donations now. As you'll see with the 100,000 donation from a private individual, for footpath repair and litter picking in the Dark Peak. It's examples like that that can really start making a difference to specific areas. And of course, they're going to be heavily involved in the 75th anniversary celebrations and showcasing there. So please do look out for what they're doing beyond the annual report we see as members. There's some really positive things coming out of the foundation.
Yeah, thank you, Janet. And I think it just underlines the usefulness of these little reports. These feedback reports to members, it raises the profile and gives you the information that you might not otherwise have caught up with. Ken Rustage.
Just a brief one, really. It said point 4, there will be multiple fundraising events throughout the year as part of the 75th anniversary of the park. And when's that? But I just wondered wider than that, and also could that sort of be linked in to get publicity and go wider afield and get people to enjoy the benefits of the national park, particularly in its 75th anniversary.
Thank you. Just one minor thing, just in paragraph 3 of that, beg pardon. Yeah, I'll come back to it in a moment. The paragraph 3, it says Derby Record Office. It should be Derbyshire Record Office, just to be clear. Yvonne Witter.
Hi, I just wanted to ask Janet, was there any discussion about, in paragraph 1, about the litter picking project? Would it involve volunteers as well across the national park? Or is it just a project for paid worker? Do you have any idea?
I don't know the answer to that. We can. Sorry.
I can check in and say yes. Sorry, I'm Dave Cramp, I'm the volunteering manager, so I have to know that money is going towards a volunteer project.
Thank you. It's going towards a volunteer project.
Right. I think over the years, Dave has led some work in collaboration with local organisation to do litter picking over the Peak District, and that has worked well. And I welcome that and look forward to getting involved in what you're doing. Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions? If not, those reports are just for noting, so they are where they are. That concludes Part A, members. What I propose is that we take agenda item 13, which is considering, as in the draft motion, that the public be excluded from the meeting, and then we'll have a comfort break for 10 minutes, and then we'll get into the Part B items. So can I have someone to move that draft motion? Janet Dugdale, seconded Martin Beer. Thank you. All those in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? Thank